it can absolutely happen anywhere, and you really just never know when or where or by whom.
A 14-year-old Indiana boy is still missing 1 week after his mysterious disappearance. But it's the last known photograph of Scottie Dean Morris that's getting a lot of attention.
Certainly, it's very suspicious. It's very concerning.
After his disappearance, investigators posted this photo of Morris wearing a t-shirt with handwritten phrases on the front, including, quote, "I'm a liar, cheat, and I hurt my little brother." According to a report by the Indy Star, the photo was likely taken just before Morris disappeared.
We just ask if anybody knows where Scottie is at, you please reach out to us. We want to get him here safe and to try to help him in whatever he needs.
Morris was last seen on March 16th, leaving his Eaton, Indiana home at about 8:30 that evening. About an hour and a half north of the capital city of Indianapolis, Eaton's temperatures have dipped below freezing since Morris's disappearance. According to former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Florina Altsealer, the t-shirt could represent several things.
But it could cut either way. It could be a shirt that he himself made and was a pre-suicide sort of a thing, cry for help. Or it could be something that somebody else made him wear as a point of embarrassment. And right now, without more detail, it's very difficult to tell which direction that heads in.
Altsealer says it could be a sign of abuse from Morris's parents, but right now it's still too early to tell.
Well, it's certainly endangering the welfare of a child, and depending on what happened to him and where he is now, it would be a sign of potentially something a lot worse happening beyond that. If they did that, if they, either made him make the shirt or made the shirt for him and then took those photos. But it could cut a different angle. It could be something that he himself did or put on as a cry for help. And really right now, we just don't know which direction that's going in.
Investigators say hundreds of volunteers and multiple departments are assisting in the search for Morris.
There is a multi-agency involvement, local law enforcement, state law enforcement, volunteer fire departments, surrounding counties, our county. We're all working together.
According to Altsealer, it's the early stages of the investigation that matter most.
So the first 48 hours are really important in an investigation because all of the evidence would still be fresh, and a lot of the DNA evidence, blood spatter evidence, all of the scientific evidence would likely lead to reliable results. The more time that goes by, the more that evidence will deteriorate and disappear. You're dealing with weather elements outside. You're dealing with things being wiped away. You're dealing with transference. You're dealing with a lot of things that happen with time that essentially erase evidence that could be helpful.
Authorities initially said that Morris was, quote, believed to be in extreme danger and may require medical assistance, but have not given any more details. The department received backlash after posting the photo of Morris wearing that t-shirt. The Eaton Police Department released a statement later saying in part, quote, that was the only photo that EPD was given to display and was quickly posted in an effort to help find Scottie. We are very sorry the post seemed as if we were trying to shame him in any way, as that would never be our intent. The department later edited the photo and cropped out Morris's shirt.
Certainly, if there's more about these parents, if there were other CPS investigations or other incidents with them, that would suggest that they might be behind this.
Morris's mother spoke exclusively with Indiana TV station WTHR. At the time, investigators said she was cooperating with law enforcement, but according to Altsealer, that isn't indicative of innocence or guilt.
I really don't give any credence to cooperation or lack of cooperation. Every single person has the right not to speak to law enforcement, and I don't think that should be held against them. At the same time, when people do speak to law enforcement and cooperate, sometimes they're quite guilty and give statements that are going to be used against them later on. So I don't think cooperation in and of itself is indicative that the person didn't do it or is a good person, or the opposite.
She says it may be a good idea for Morris's family to retain an attorney.
I think anytime anybody is a potential suspect, whether they did it or not, it is a good idea, unfortunately, to not say anything. And to have an attorney speak on their behalf so that those statements are not later used against them. And that's not because they're guilty. It's because they may sound like they're guilty, and that's never good. And of course, if they are guilty, then certainly they don't want to give up evidence against themselves.
But Altsealer also says a parent shouldn't be judged for how they react to their child's disappearance.
I think a lot of times we're quick to say things like, well, if this was my child, that's not how I would be acting or reacting. But I think it's very difficult to know how anyone would act or react unless and until you're in those shoes. And even then, two different people who are genuinely suffering from the loss of their child could react quite differently. Trauma is handled in many different ways by different people. And so to judge solely based on statements made and the facial expressions and emotional reactions or lack thereof, I think is unfair.
Altsealer says the most important step is finding Morris. Whether alive or dead, it will help answer questions about his disappearance.
If he's deceased, there's the question of what caused him to pass, but also there's the question of what put him into the position to then pass in the first place. So even if they did not kill him, if they abused him, if they emotionally abused him, if they physically abused him, if they caused him to go out there in just a t-shirt and be out there for who knows how long, perhaps there were other crimes that were committed. And if those crimes that were committed were abuse that rose to the level of a felony, and then he died in the course thereof, that could be felony murder, even if they didn't intend to kill him and didn't kill him, but committed other crimes that then resulted in his death.
Moving forward, officials say the search for Morris continues with assistance from local, state, and national investigators via drone, sonar equipment, boats, and canine units.
I'm assuming that they're going to be contacting every person that this young man has had contact with. And I expect that they're doing a digital trace of evidence to see whether if he had a cell phone, where that phone might be tracked, if he was using any sort of technology where that may have last been used, looking at web addresses and looking at where those were logged in, looking at whatever social media history he might have from before his disappearance, and speaking to his friends and classmates and whoever else had contact with him. Sometimes they could scour local Ring cameras, doorbell cameras from the neighborhood, neighborhood surveillance cameras to see if he's witnessed on those cameras moving through a location, potentially being abducted, potentially getting into a vehicle, whatever last steps he took and wherever he last was.
Law&Crime Network reached out to Morris's family for this story, but have not yet heard back. Anyone with more information about his whereabouts is asked to contact the Eaton Police Department. Reporting for Law&Crime Network, I'm Gillespie.